Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on I'm on Unity Catalog, Now What? Thank you, everyone, for joining, and we are excited to kick things off. If you are familiar with Unity Catalog, you probably are also familiar with some of the other content we've put out on this topic, but we wanted to just have some time that we spend on, now that Unity Catalog has been out for a little while, you're likely on Unity Catalog or migrated to Unity Catalog, and you're wondering, what are my next steps? So this is what this topic is going to be covering. If you are not too familiar, that's okay. We'll give you some context on that as well. And you're welcome to check out our website, bpcs.com, to learn a little bit more about the topic. We have a lot of content on there, previous webinars, and so much more. But I wanted to just, first of all, say thank you for joining and give a quick introduction about myself and Blueprint. So my name is Ruthie Senanayaka. I work on the marketing team here at Blueprint, and we are a technology solutions company, so doing everything from strategy to execution. And we are a Databricks partner. And just recently at the Data AI Summit, we won the Data and AI Governance Award. So lots to do with Unity Catalog and everything data. That's what we do at Blueprint. I would really encourage you to ask any questions that you have in regard to this topic. You can easily add them into the Q&A section on StreamYard. You can also, if you are watching live on any of the platforms that we are on right now, you can just simply add it to the comment section, and we will be able to see it live and answer it live as well. We have two of our awesome speakers here from Blueprint joining us to give you some really great content, Shannon and Tenny. So I'll allow them to give their own introductions, and then we will kick things off with the content. But quick reminder again, we really want to encourage you to ask questions. We have, Shannon is a Databricks champion, so this is a great opportunity for you to ask any of the questions that you have. Thank you all, and we will kick things off right now.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Ruthie. So I'm Tenny Penn. I'm a data engineer with Blueprint. I've been here a little over 2 years now. So happy to speak on Unity Catalog today, and I'm joined with Shannon.
Hi, I'm Shannon. Like we've already heard, Databricks champion, Bimmel hero, anything to do with data, I'm your guy, and I'm looking forward to teaching you anything I can about what's next with Unity Catalog.
Great, thanks. So let's move on to the agenda. So for today, we've got a quick introduction and then 3 main topics or features we wanted to discuss. So serverless being one of them, data governance, of course, obviously, and then also Databricks Genie, which is Databricks' Gen BI. And then we'll close it out with a Q&A and Ask Me Anything section. So first off, serverless is a big one. Right now that you're in Unity Catalog, serverless compute is an option, and it's a pretty good solution for workflows for compute. You're saying essentially goodbye to startup times, goodbye to cluster management, and starting to realize some cost savings with your compute. You see governance. Of course, we have to talk about governance when it comes to Unity Catalog. We'll talk about a couple of aspects of it, how to do governance well, and how to really start to take advantage of the metadata aspects of it, so that you can start to see, incorporate your data intelligence and meet your compliance and security needs. And that all kind of builds up to Genie, our Databricks Gen BI solution, which is a really great feature and kind of visionary to help improve productivity and really see time to value for revenue. So just a quick introduction on that. So with Databricks serverless features, this is just really quick from Databricks, and Shane, you can take it away to kind of talk about serverless.
Absolutely. So as Tenny mentioned, now that serverless is available, you can kiss startup times goodbye. And the way Databricks has done that is they actually have pools of VMs ready to go whenever you want to kick off, say, a notebook or a job or a DLT pipeline. So rather than having to wait up to about 5 minutes to get your cluster online, these clusters are standing by. And they can be used for any of these items you see here: Mosaic AI, notebooks, SQL queries, dashboards, workflows, and DLT. Let's go to the next slide. So let's talk about some of the benefits. Like I've already said, near instant startup. I'm seeing 5 seconds on average to start up, sometimes as low as 2 seconds, as high as 7 seconds, but generally around 5 seconds. And the big benefit here is you could have some cost savings. And what kinds of things do we see saving money? Those burstable workloads that you have, or those workloads where, let's say your job takes 7 minutes to run, but the first 5 minutes of it is just spinning up the cluster. Well, that's waste. So anytime you've got runtime, execution time about the same as startup, that's something you're going to want to try serverless for. Jobs, quick queries, things like that. But keep in mind, it's not for everything. Think about streaming jobs that you'll leave running for days, weeks, months at a time. Anything that's got a really long startup or a really long execution time when compared to the startup time, you're going to stick with traditional compute. Other benefits, instead of having to run your job, test it, see how it performs, then check it out in LHO, our Lakehouse Optimizer, to figure out, well, how many nodes, what types of nodes you need for a given workload. Once you send that workload off to serverless, it's going to auto scale. And it's basically trying to give you the greatest performance it can. In the future, you are going to get some kind of control over this automatic scaling. What I'm hearing is you'll be able to control speed, or you'll be able to control cost. So you'll have some control over the scaling, really just those two levers. Other big benefit, reduced management. You don't have to keep track of versions, Databricks runtime versions. You don't have to make sure that all your clusters or your job clusters are following a certain policy. All of that headache is taken away. Also, I would like to point out, I missed this when I talked about cost savings. You're just paying DBUs for serverless. The DBUs include the price of the VM. It's not like a traditional workload where you're paying for DBUs plus you're paying your cloud provider for those VMs that you have running that job. Now it's billed just as the DBU. So that can also cut your costs as well. But for all those benefits, there are some limitations. Any workload you have that regularly takes more than 8 gigs per node, per worker node, you're not going to want to send that to serverless. So your data science jobs, your machine learning jobs, probably aren't going to be great fits for serverless. There is some data security concerns. So the data will go to these VMs that Databricks is operating on your behalf, but that is technically outside your data plane. You can secure it, so you can set up VNets and you can set up VPCs to control the flow of that data, so that the data can only go from your data plane to their compute and back again. So you can control that, but it's not the same as the data staying entirely in your data plane. So if you've got some concerns around GDPR, where you've got to process data in a certain locality, you can find out where the Databricks VMs are running, but it may not be the same as what's in your current cloud environment. And last but not least, not all languages are supported in serverless. No R, no Scala. Your Python and SQL is pretty much your limitation there for now. We may see that change, we may not. And if you have more questions about best practices around when to try serverless and when to leave it alone, we did have a webinar 2 weeks ago, Tenny, 3 weeks ago, that really dives into the math behind when do we want to try serverless. And that's it for serverless compute.
Sounds good. So now moving on to Unity Catalog governance. Just a quick slide as we're moving, away from Hive Metastore into UC. You're getting a lot of benefits, right? So previously, where you saw limited either visibility or fragmented data and metadata across your workspaces. Now you've got a centralized repository, a lot of detailed audit logs, and where we were reliant on tribal knowledge data SMEs to have data discovery and also that built-in data lineage, that's all included and automated as part of Unity Catalog. So as we're talking about Unity Catalog, now is the time to utilize it, do governance well, start to incorporate a lot of the metadata and documentation. So, we have got a couple of bullet points on, best practices around here. And then one that we are going to kind of talk a little bit about is around data quality metrics, right? So previously you would have to do this, build this out yourself, things that you're tracking. But there is a new feature that Databricks has called the Lakehouse Monitor. And this is just a quick snapshot of the dashboard that gets automatically created when you do set up a monitor for your tables. And just to note, this is, I believe it's either public preview or GA, but you do need to be on Unity Catalog and you need serverless. So a prerequisite, the serverless compute if you do end up using it. And it's a really cool solution to track both your profile metrics and drift metrics on your different tables. They are also tracking LLM quality, so I think things like toxicity and biases as well. So, just a quick overview, there's things like data volume and then data integrity. So, how many columns do you have, nulls and rows, as well as those like numerical like statistics on the distribution and like the drift monitoring. So I think it's really useful, but not the end all be all. It's just a really cool feature. So when you're seeing like common use cases for data science, for example, where one of the big problems that they're facing is the underlying drift on the data that they're using for their models, and you want to track those statistical properties. LLM quality is a good starting point, but just knowing that that's a pretty big challenge when it comes to monitoring LLM and those types of models when you're moving to prod. So our AI team actually internally is working on sort of understanding that reality of monitoring LLMs in production, because toxicity is kind of just the tip of the iceberg. I think there's a lot more to monitoring that, but Lakehouse Monitors is a pretty cool feature now that you are in Unity Catalog, something to look into as well. One other thing being, if you do have privacy and other security needs, there is a private preview feature that is coming out on PII detection classification, and that's all going to be kind of included in this monitor as well. So, okay, so with Unity Catalog governance, they've got a pretty new approach to metadata. Everything is centralized, everything is in one place on your platform in Databricks, and there is custom metadata capabilities and tags. So, one use case being for tagging PII and any sensitive data. So it's a really good way to start to enable those security and privacy needs, as well as enable these upcoming AI features, such as Genie that we're going to kind of go into. And really just focusing on making sure your data is well-governed, well documented. So with having Unity Catalog, some of the top three that we wanted to touch base on or touch upon is having that improved data discovery. So with your naming conventions being consistent, making sure you've got your comments and that metadata on your tables and columns, as well as introducing tags, you've got the improved data discovery, right? So your users are able to kind of search, find things that they might need that they might not have known existed in your catalog. With that, we've talked a little bit about data lineage and how important that is in understanding all of your upstream and downstream impacts, and doing that impact analysis in your processes, as well as building out that data catalog, right? We want to move towards pretty high data literacy. So removing that need for those data domain owners to be the only ones that know what's in your catalog, and just really kind of increasing that onboarding time or decreasing the onboarding time for users, because you want to have that information available. And with the discovery, that's kind of tied into that PCI, PI detection with tags and such. So with this flexibility on search, as long as that data is there. Okay. And this one's a doozy, but for sure, things we want to touch upon, features that exist that you might want to use if you have sensitive data and want to start controlling those access controls. So like we mentioned before, moving from Hive Metastore, it's by default open. So anybody can access it once they have access to the workspace. And Unity Catalog is by default closed. So there's a lot of permissions that you want to work out, models that you want to make sure you control, whether that's creating those groups and doing role-based access controls, or with tags managing a more attribute-based access control. So a couple of features, right, that are now out, like row level and column level security, and you've got those data masking capabilities to make sure the things that are sensitive are encrypted and protected, as well as having those audit logs, very detailed audit logs and compliance reporting to support those needs as well. Okay. Next, we have a couple of other aspects of Unity Catalog, some features that are pretty flexible. So, you have pretty common scenarios, one being volumes. So instead of having access to your underlying storage accounts, you've got a single point of access for files and folders. So you can imagine if, data scientists are using media files, images, things like that don't necessarily fit into a UC table, you can use volumes to still use the power of their fine-grained access controls and manage access to those. We have external managed tables as well as Delta sharing, and then within that subset, data clean rooms as well. So you are able to still have UC on top of external tables. Anything that I guess is managed externally, like ADF or what's it called? Yeah, ADF or Event Hub, things like that, you're still able to include in your Unity catalog. And then Delta sharing being the really great safe data integration feature, right? So being able to share data within the organization from metadata store to metastore, or even externally. And as a part of that, a subset making data clean rooms. So this is another privacy-focused aspect where you're able to collaborate on your data, get your insights with external parties without compromising your privacy and security needs.
I would like to chime in here about these three features. I'm seeing these three features become more and more important. Volumes, as developers move away from direct file manipulation for their ETL processes and move more towards a Unity catalog approach, there are still some holdouts where you've written a process that absolutely needs to work on files. And that's another good use case that I see popping up pretty regularly once companies start adopting Unity catalog, is you can set up volumes so that perhaps your developers can only see the dev copies of those files, and then a managed identity has access to the prod versions of those files. It's really becoming like Tony said, a single point of contact when it comes to who has access to what. Similarly, a lot of ingestion pipelines are starting to depend on external managed tables. So you can set up a connection between your Databricks workspace, between your metastore, your Unity Catalog metastore, and a SQL Server or Oracle or MySQL. And I believe there's 8 types of connections you can have now. And you can pull that data out and you can apply access controls. You can control who can see that data. Maybe just your developers, maybe just your ETL developers need access to it. But again, single point of contact, even for some of those things that are outside of your Databricks environment. And Delta sharing, the most common use I see now is companies who are multi-region. Maybe they've got some data redundancy between East Coast and West Coast. Since metastores are limited to a single region, you may still need to access that data from the other region. So in that case, you can actually share some of your metastore data from the West Coast to East Coast and vice versa. So these three features unlock a lot of capability.
Thanks, Shannon. Okay, so now with, I guess, our discussion on making sure you are doing governance well, you're starting to document your data and make use of all of those different features and capabilities. An example of something we've been doing is with the abundance data that's exposed in the system tables, we can now sort of create these metrics and calculate, is our data documented well, right? Coming up with like a governance health metric to point to areas that would need more coverage, right? Because we want to make sure our metadata is there, our comments, our descriptions, tags if there are, and measure how ready we are for things like Gen AI or Gen BI models that rely on having that metadata there. So it's really helpful in assessing on how ready your data is and your data state is for Gen AI, because ultimately, can Gen AI understand your tables and make inferences and understand what they are and what they're used for? And that's what's going to assist in getting better insights, better answers from those types of models. So here is just kind of an example of how you could visualize it. We're using a sunburst where you can drill down and see catalogs at the schema level and the table level, what percentage you have currently, and things to work towards. Yep, and now we've come to a poll.
Yep, so now's your time to interact with us. One of the things I hope that you've taken away from what Tenny shared with you is once you have your data in Unity Catalog, that's just the first step. Having those comments, having tags that can describe your data in different ways, like tagging your PII, your PCI, or your HIPAA data, tagging data that's related to sales versus related to operations. Right now, that's a fairly manual process. You either write some SQL that says add comment on table to, and then you give it a comment, or you add tag to table, column, whatever, and you've got to go through that entity by entity, so table by table, column by column. Think about the number of tables and views you have in your environment today. How long would it take you to add a comment to all the tables that your consumers have access to? How long would it take to add tags? I'm going to guess that's a pretty large effort. If you've started this process, you've probably noticed for comments, you can click the AI generate option, and it will look at your table, look at the metadata, the data types and stuff like that. And it's going to make a guess as to what that table is all about or view is all about. You can accept it or you can correct it, but that's still very manual. So we've asked Databricks, along with some others, to give us API access to this AI suggestion. And our idea is we could come up with a way to let AI take the first pass at the comments necessary to jumpstart your journey to Gen BI or to Genie. And so we come up with two options. We'd like to hear from you. Which of the next two options do you like? Or if you don't like either of the next two options, enter 3 and tell us what you'd like. So option 1, this process would automatically add all the comments and tags that it can come up with, and then you only have to remediate them when they're wrong. This is taking a very optimistic approach to adding these comments. The alternative is to take a pessimistic approach, and instead of adding those comments and tags automatically, you queue them up in a way that they go through a human approval process before they get tagged. But either way, we really want to start leveraging the power of AI to jumpstart your journey to get even more out of your data. So if you could comment back 1, 2, or 3, let us know what you think. We'd love to hear what you're thinking. It could be the next big thing that we release. You never know.
Cool. We'll give them a few more minutes or seconds, but moving on to talking about Databricks Genie. So these are some blurbs from Databricks themselves, but it is a pretty different way of thinking about BI. It is Databricks' version of a self-serve data analytics service, right? So this is set up so that data analysts can then create these workspaces where non-technical business users are meant to interact with data using natural language. And like we mentioned before, it is working off of the metadata that you have on your tables and your objects in Unity Catalog so that they can create the proper responses, create the right queries and such. But it is really interesting because, prior to this, when we think of BI, we're thinking of, dashboards, reporting and such like that. But now with this Gen BI Databricks approach, instead of building out a dashboard to answer all your questions, and with well-governed and documented data sets, you're using a interface and using natural language questions. So the idea is that you can have ad hoc questions, repeatable questions, things that other people in the team or the org are commonly asking, and they're able to do it via this interface. Because as we're seeing it, dashboards are a little old school. We've seen clients that have thousands of them, and maybe they are being maintained but don't necessarily contribute value daily, right? So there's this new paradigm shift of not just using a dashboard, but having an interface to ask questions now with the popularity of ChatGPT and other LLMs and things like that. So it's a really cool new feature and foray into Gen BI. So in our experience with it, when you're setting up this workspace for Databricks Uni, what's most important is kind of identifying your space and your business objective and tailoring it towards that. So when you have your key business objective, you want to find your critical data sets or the key data tables that would likely feed and things that your analysts would be using regularly for those anyways. And then any additional domain knowledge or being able to create those like sample queries and functions that you want to add, making sure those customized prompts and instructions are included as well. Because it's great to have, like in our next point, well-commented and tagged data, but any other information that might help Genie be able to answer a question better should be stored, should be saved, should be added. So with this well-commented and tagged data, it's helping the model understand the context and relationships within your data set and make those better inferences. Because like we said, we're not working off the data itself, but the metadata around your object. So being able to understand the relationships with the tables and certain columns will help greatly. And the value that we're seeing now is really for those technical analysts to be able to kind of remove that lift and be able to have this available to tackle any operational or business questions and increase their productivity and get to an answer quicker. So we've got a couple of different use cases as an example, customer segmentation being a very common one, inventory management or product performance analysis. So you can see where these use cases would pop up. And for customer segmentation, we're going to go into an example of setting up a Genie workspace for that. But really, you see this as a pretty common question, right? You want to be able to use customer data, tie them to marketing campaigns, and understand, transactional pieces to it. So like some questions that you might ask your Genie is, what customer segments have the highest lifetime value or, greatest sales over time, or what customers have made repeat purchases and what are their common characteristics, right? Like what are their age groups, what are the other demographics around that? So you can take that to marketing, use that in your campaigns and such. So we'll go into, so go ahead.
I was going to say, before we go any further, we do have a series of webinars we've produced on different use cases using Genie, using AI, using the different features of Databricks. Definitely go check out our archive. A lot of really good information there to really dig into these three examples.
Cool. Yep, and so we've got a couple of quick screenshots. So I went ahead and created a specific customer segmentation Genie workspace. I fed it a couple of data tables, sample tables, one being customer data, a demographics table, and then some product transactions. And here I'm just asking, the typical question, what product categories are most frequently purchased by customers in the highest income bracket? This is sort of a random question, but a very directed question and a directed prompt. And then you can see here, Genie's able to quickly give me an explanation on how they came to the answer, the description, as well as the actual answer here. So again, if you are a technical analyst, you're able to go ahead and see the generated code and see the underlying SQL query that they used. Do some fact checking, making sure this is aligned with how you would do it as well. But now you have a really quick and easy way to output that question or output that answer. So really cool. And it's another one-click button to click visualize, and they can, based off that data set they provided me, create a visualization, a bar chart. Really simply, you could change it from a bar chart to a different type of chart or visualization if you wanted to, but it's all there as well. Here I'm just asking a follow-up question, right? Which age group I'm looking for has the highest average spending per transaction? Again, a pretty quick answer and a pretty quick time to that productivity. And another example we've got is which customer segments have the highest lifetime value? So that's the one that we had in the previous slide. And here, the explanation, you can see the underlying query that went into providing that answer. And here, I think it's important to see you can add as an instruction. So this doesn't necessarily have a where statement, but in the time that you need to filter based on values within your tables, it's always helpful to go back and look at the underlying query and see where Genie is inputting those, because if there's anything that they might have used, you should use instead, you can go ahead and make those edits and add that as an instruction. So additional data for Genie to save and then use in the next time that this question is asked, especially if it's something that comes up frequently. So sorry, Shannon, anything to add before we head to the next slide?
No, that was a great brief explanation.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that was Genie, GenBI. So just to kind of wrap up our talk, what we suggest, right, from those 3 topics is when it comes to serverless, very quick takeaway is for short jobs. I think the sweet spot right now and may differ from client to client and org to org, about 5 minutes, right? Short job, it's you have some cost savings there as well as interactive notebooks. You might want to use serverless. And in terms for governance activities, there's a lot of features that you can start to use and utilize for your use cases, but make sure that you are putting work into putting documentation, your metadata around your data, so that you can go ahead and realize more insights when you start to use GenBI, such as Genie. And for Genie itself, right now, I think the vision is for business users to be able to, non-technical business users to start to interact with your data. We don't see it there yet, but it's very useful for the technical analyst persona right now. And there is, once you've done the setup, started these workspaces, I think there is some day-to-day lift that you're going to be seeing. Cool. All right. So moving to the discussion aspect, we're ready for AMA or Q&A.
You're muted, Ruthie.
Dang it. I was like, I hopped right on and then I realized it. Thanks for pointing that out, Shannon. I just wanted to say thank you guys for all of the really, really awesome content. Like Shannon mentioned, we do have a really great library of webinars that we've put on in the past that you are welcome to hop in and look at all of that content. I've added the link to this stream, so feel free to just click on that. You can take a look on our website as well for more details. And we do have a couple more minutes if you do have questions. If you have something more specific that you want to ask, let's say it's about your org or your company as a whole, feel free to email us and we will get back to you on that as well. We can do consultations as well. We offer workshops and various different solutions to learn more about how you can really leverage Unity Catalog for your organization. So I'm going to add my email up on the screen. It's just ruthie@bpcs.com. So if you have further questions, you can send them my way. And either Shannon, Tenny, or myself, we will email you with a response as well. I'm just going to give a couple more seconds for people to submit any questions, and we can wrap things up. Well, it looks like you have already answered every question that people have. So thank you so much for presenting for us, Shannon and Tenny. We appreciate the time that you put into this talk. And once again, if you have further questions, you can email me at ruthie@bpcs.com. And you can hop onto our website, that is bpcs.com, to learn more about any solutions that you're looking for. And if you're really just getting started with the idea of migrating over to Unity Catalog, we'd love to chat with you about that too. We are a preferred partner by Databricks, and so we have a really, really great data engineers, data scientists that you can work with to get this migration done and done right. So if you have questions about that, you can email us. But thank you all so much for joining. We hope you have an awesome rest of your Wednesday, and we hope to see you on our next webinar coming up. We do have quite a few lined up, so check out our website. Under the events tab, you can sign up there. You can also follow us on social media. On our LinkedIn page, we do add all of our webinars on there, so you can join us live on LinkedIn or any of the other platforms that we hop on live to. Thank you, Shannon and Tenny, and thank you everyone for joining. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.